episode when we were talking about wide receiver twos that I like the value of the wide receiver one on their same team, and that was Ayuk that I like better, and that was in reference to Deebo Samuel, and I have Deebo Samuel as my bust candidate this year. I think last year showed you that once you got someone like Christian McCaffrey in the fold, and they didn't have to rely on Deebo Samuel in the rushing game and the trickery and moving him all over the field like they did the year before, it made him very one-dimensional. And not that he's not that. I mean, I think he's a good receiver, but I think the way they use him in San Francisco and the offense does no longer lead to him having all that explosive playmaking ability, because his yards per target was under 7 yards per target. It was like low sixes. You're not going to get much offense out of that, and unless your yak ends up being like 18 yards, like it was for or 17 yards, like it was for AJ Brown. You're not going to get the production that you're looking for out of a wide receiver one there. So that's my bust candidate this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. We talked about it last week, where this is a guy that I valued Ayuk over, and this was a guy that I think his role is diminishing in this offense, and we've seen his production go down over the last season, and I think it's going to continue to go down this season. Because they brought in other players that can do what he does and better than what he does. So, my bust candidate this year is Mike Evans, and put some yellow tape on this. Red tape, yellow tape. It's a caution. Okay.
Caution tape.
It's not a stay out zone. But he is my bust candidate because I think we've grown accustomed in Mike Evans' career to seeing end of season numbers being 1,000 yards at least, and 8 touchdowns at least. And I just think Baker Mayfield is or Kyle Trask, neither one of them is very talented at throwing the deep ball, and that's what Mike Evans relies on for a lot of his production. And Mike Evans is not a bad receiver. I still think he's going to get production. I still think he's going to be involved in this offense, but a lot of the big plays, a lot of the massive production games, we've seen Mike Evans have 30-point weeks and then follow it up with a 5-point dud. And the reason he had those 30-point weeks is because he'd have 2 long touchdowns. And, they're not going to get that with Baker. Baker cannot sustain deep ball receivers. I can't be more clear about that. Like, he's not all of a sudden going to become this guy that, like, he's now Tom Brady and just going to chuck the ball deep. No, this is not his game. Like, he's going to be a game manager, if that. And I expect Godwin and I expect tight ends and even Russell Gage to be more involved in the passing game. I think this offense is going to turn to Rashad White a little bit more and the run game. I just don't see them running seam routes up the side and chucking the ball to Mike Evans, who's going to make a play on it. Like, no. Evans has had the luxury of having 2 of the best deep ball throwers. I want to say Jameson Winston is one of the best, but he was very good at throwing the deep ball.
Yeah, he was. He did it. And he also had, don't forget, Fitzmagic too, who's great at throwing the deep ball. And Tom Brady is very accurate at throwing the deep ball.
Right. So he's had guys that are very, like, his production has gone really well with the quarterback's ability to throw the deep ball. And Baker's just not that. And Baker was never that. Baker's not going to all of a sudden become that, because it's not like Byron Leftwich is this like offensive guru too that's going to be like, no, let me show you how to throw the ball deep. No, sorry, Baker. Like, I think you might be a great guy, but you're not going to throw the ball deep, and you're not going to be successful at it.
Evans had 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. It's his lowest touchdown mark since 2017 in Tampa, and that year he had 1 yard over 1,000 on 71 catches, and he had a low yards per target. Again, his yards per target went up after that season, so did his production, but then his yards per target dipped down again a whole yard almost last year. And I mean, I agree. I think Baker Mayfield is not the guy that you got to be excited about throwing him the ball. I mean, his accuracy is not great. His completion percentage is not great. and it showed last year. I mean, in
Bring back
Baker's
Joe Krabs Winston.
in
Trade for him.
in Baker's best season, he threw for 3,800 yards. I think that was the first season with Odell and Landry together, and he still only threw for 22 touchdowns, and he didn't even throw for 4,000 yards. He threw 534 times that season. That if you can't throw for 4,000 yards and throwing the ball 500 times, almost 550 times, just goes to show that you don't have a downfield threat in the arm. And he had downfield threat receivers, and he only completed the ball 317 times. So I'm not a Baker believer. I'm not a believer. I love him as his attitude and his gamer, but I agree. I think it's a good bust candidate in Mike Evans. It's maybe his first season under 1,000.
If there's a prop bet on any betting site that has Mike Evans under 1,000 yards and it pays out pretty decent, place a bet on it.
You heard it here. Place that prop bet.
I expect some return.